Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. My name is Mr. Ali on The Real Story. Today is Thursday, the 26th of November. And today we are talking about the bereavement and the pastoral care when someone passes away in the last few months during COVID, and the psychological, the emotional support that one is needed. So we are going to be talking about that. But before we get to today's topic, it's all about the different tiers at the end of lockdown that's been announced by Boris Johnson and the Conservative government. And across West Midlands, the majority of the area is now going to be under tier 3. So it is going to be still under a semi-lockdown, whereby we are allowed to go to places of worship. We are the non-essential shops going to start opening from the 2nd of December. But unfortunately, a lot of the hospitality sector still remain deeply affected as well. And the reason why West Midlands is under tier 3 is because we have seen a plateauing. So the numbers haven't increased, but we've seen a steadying off of the numbers of infections. So, for example, in the last week, the infections were 334 per 100,000, and the week before was 347. So what Dr. Justin Varney, who is the director of the public health, have said is that there needs to be a sustained period of decline over 10 days in order for the for us to be in a tier 2 situation as well. So Liverpool seem to be one of the success stories, simply because over the last month they have gone from the top tier, and they've now, at the end of lockdown, come down to tier 2 as well. And also we have to bear in mind that the over 60s, the ones that are being seriously affected by COVID, they are plateauing out at the moment. So they need to see a decline in order for us to come out of tier 3 as well. So that's where we are. So in the last week or so, we have seen a real death in some of our elderly. So over the last weekend, we had a number of our senior uncles, senior respected figures of our community who have passed away, the likes of Haji Salim, the likes of Haji Niaz, and many others as well. The Ikram Mirza's father as well, Haji Bashir, a number of prominent elderly figures who came into this country in the 50s and 60s, unfortunately succumbed over the last week. So it is a tough time for us. And someone who has also experienced some bereavement in the last few weeks, and also personally going back a couple of months as well, is none other than Razia Hadait, who's kindly agreed to come and talk about what the experience that she has had over the last few months as well. So first of all, thank you so much, Razia, for taking time out on a Thursday evening to talk about your personal journey. It has been it's been a very hard-hitting couple of months. So I know you may get a bit emotional, and I'm sure our viewers and our listeners are going to remain supportive and understand that it is a tough journey for all of us. So, before we start, how has the last 6-7 months been for you?
Hi, Ali. Thank you for having me on your show. This year has seen us in a really journey that I don't think I can ever recall, because in the first lockdown, we were caught in the lockdown in Pakistan, so we were stranded for over a month, and then arriving back in April, having that journey, experience, and then we obviously tried to get back to normal, and then my father passed away in October, but fortunate for us, it wasn't COVID related. But the experience of him actually, he suffered Parkinson's for a very long time, and on this particular day he fell in the bathroom and broke his hip. So obviously he was taken by the ambulance to the hospital, and no one was allowed to go with him, and he was in hospital for 3 weeks. We had no contact whatsoever. One of the things for us was that he never used mobile phones. The elderly, they don't really use the phones because they're being at home.
Sure.
So we didn't even realize that maybe if he had a phone, we could have made contact with him. and the only contact we had from the hospital was because they wanted to clarify that they're not going to do DNR. So their concern was to make us understand we're not going to do DNR. Do you understand? Do you understand? And you can contact whenever you want, and we'll keep you updated. We had no phone call for updates or anything. Then the only call we had that they were going to move him to Heartlands for rehabilitation. So they moved into Heartlands. Still, we've had no physical contact, so no phone contact, no nothing. And then after a couple of days in Heartlands, we got through and they said they'll arrange a Zoom call for us. So they gave my dad a laptop. They didn't tell him what to do. They just landed it on to him and we managed to speak to him. And he was all bewildered. His beard was hanging, like he'd never kept a beard. He actually fouled because he went in the bathroom to shave because he'd forget that he can't do it and he would still try to go. So I spoke to the nurse. I asked my dad, "Why haven't you had a shave?" And he said, "Oh, they haven't got time, and I'm okay." And but obviously we were upset because we don't know if Dad understood that we can't come and see him because of COVID. But when he came out, just backtrack a little bit. When he came out of the hospital, sorry, the operation, they did say to us that they can't calm him down, and if a member of the family can come. So I went to see my dad. I stayed with him 3 hours and explained to him that we're not allowed to come to the hospital and it's COVID. But he said, no, you are allowed. So we don't know, even up until this day now, that did Dad ever understand why we did come to visit. He might have thought we dumped him, and a couple of times on the Zoom call he said, oh, just forget I'm dead, forget I'm your dad and all this. But we can't take all this back because that's what Dad had with him when he died. So obviously, come August, he was in July. Come August, I'm not exactly sure what date it was, 10, 11 or something like that. Saturday, we had a Zoom call with Dad, and then he was fine talking. He said he was okay. Then on Tuesday, we had a call saying that we have to let you know your dad's taken a turn for the worst and he's got an infection and you need to come and say your goodbyes. So we were like shocked. We thought, what's going on? And so then I phoned my mom and my sister-in-law that you need to make your way back. They said only two people at a time. So when we went, they told me and my sister, because we arrived first, we were the only ones that were allowed in, and they were sat with
Sure.
us, spoke to us, and they moved him into a private room. And they said you can bring anyone till 9 o'clock in the evening, and then you have to go home. So you can imagine leaving your parent there that you know that might not make it the next morning. And then we asked them if how many people can we have. They said only as less as possible, but we said there's 5 siblings and there's my mom, so there's 6 of us already. So how do you want us to choose which one stays and which one goes? So then while we were visiting Dad, we found that he was perking up. He started picking up, and the hospital must have thought, well, we let them in now. What do we do? So they started harassing us at the door, as a security, you can't go in. And we said, look, he's on end of life program and we don't need to come here and argue with you lot for half an hour before we make our way up. So they're causing us so much stress. So in the end, we spoke to the doctors and said if we can take him home. So he stayed home alive with us for 8 weeks at home in a lot of pain, which could have been avoided. He was like a skeleton, living skeleton. He lost so much weight. So we asked the nurses. What they were saying is their responsibility is to put the tray there, whether they eat it or not. They can't force them to eat. But when someone's really old in their 80s plus, they need support to get fed. So this is where, for me, that's my personal opinion. People might have different opinion. My argument is that a family member should be allowed to stay with their parent or sibling or whoever it is. So Dad did not have COVID. All the tests are done. He did not have COVID. Um, and
Razia, can
he
I come in there,
died at
please?
yeah,
So I know at the early parts of the COVID, no one was allowed to visit their loved ones, and we know a
yeah,
lot of families, unfortunately, weren't able to be there when their loved ones passed away at the hospital. But I know around from July, August onwards, the government announced that one nominated person from the family was able to be the conduit, the go-between between the hospital, the patient, and the family. Were you not given that to one nominated person?
no,
Oh, oh,
nothing.
okay,
They said we
okay.
weren't allowed. We weren't allowed. They said no one was allowed. And so we really didn't know much. But obviously, when they phoned us and said he's not going to make it, we never asked questions. We weren't in a mental state to ask those questions. Priority was to
No,
look
no.
after dad.
Because
And
when our loved
also,
ones are in hospital, they have language barriers, so they don't know when to take
yeah,
the medication. Sometimes they may not have eaten, because not only are they not physically able to eat, they may have some questions whether it is halal or not. Because a lot of the elderly
hmm
members aren't sure that a lot of the meats now in hospitals, especially in Birmingham, is halal. But if you don't know, you don't know. So that may be another reason.
hmm
That's why it's important for a loved one to be there, to be the interpreter, and just to support them and talk in their own language. So you mentioned your father wasn't, confident in using a phone, and there's a lot of parents like that. So
hmm
for me, I think at that, final moments or when they're in hospital, it is absolutely important that one nominated family member should be allowed to be there.
just to even help with the feeding time, and we'd be an asset to the NHS, to the staff in the hospital. So we would be taking a burden off them by looking after some of the patients, who are there. I'm just gonna give an example. My friend also, they lost their parents for COVID, both mom and dad, within 10 days of each other. This was just like last month. So one week my dad died, and the following week my friend's father died, and then the following week her mother died. So they allowed the family to come in because so the dad died of COVID, and then when they went in, they had the tests that they were negative, the family, the girls. And when they went to see their mom who was dying, they got chased by security out of the hospital because they
Sorry, say
recognized
that
them that
again.
they got chased out of the hospital by security because they said that you've
Wow.
already been in a COVID ward, yet she had a negative test and they wouldn't let her see her mom dying. And these things, that if you think that's going to help bereavement and help us to grieve, it's not. We're full of
No,
anger, and
no.
it's taking its toll on being able to grieve. And and also, I mean, I was when I spoke to you that last week, it was a bit too emotional because my uncle, unfortunately, he passed away
Sure.
of COVID within a week in Dewsbury, and I know the in Bradford and Dewsbury they're having huge issues. We're still fortunate in a way, and then his two sons were also in hospital. One son was critical. He still doesn't know that his father's died and buried, and they wouldn't let the family go near the hospital. They wouldn't let them leave the house. And when a husband and wife have been married for 60 years and you can't even be with your husband when he passes away, we're going to have huge, huge mental health issues after this. It broke my heart when I found out my auntie couldn't even go and sit with her husband. So they done a video call and they let her see her husband die on a video. I mean, I can't imagine anyone getting over that grief. Four sons my
Absolutely.
uncle had, and none of them were allowed at the janazah. If anyone else can wear PPE and go in and be safe, why can't the family members? This is the last moment that I can't see my dad again now alive, can I? They can't see their dad.
No,
My
no.
auntie can't see her husband again. And when you lose a family member, it's especially parent. If I had a choice and my dad had COVID and they gave me the choice and said, "Do you want to come and see your dad?" I don't care if he had COVID because I want to be with my dad when he was dying and be there for him. And in our culture, it's a massive impact on families not being able to visit, and you're phoning up. Is it safe to come to the house? Are we going to get in trouble? Is the police going to knock on the door? Is someone going to report us? It was just the journey is
No, no,
something that
absolutely. I
is
suppose
just.
it is a responsibility of the hospital to make sure not only are they
Mhm,
looking after yourselves, your father, but there's other people within the hospital vicinity and also within the ward that they don't pass it on as best as they can. So I can understand they're
mhm,
trying to limit it, but you know most consultants and hospitals are aware when it's the last few hours of a critical patient, and they normally sort of give you a bit of advance notice that it's looking rather bleak and you've only got a
mhm,
few hours to call your family, and at that time you can call your immediate family, the sons and the daughters to come in and bid you farewell. And I know what you mean. Unless you have that closure, it's very hard for you to grieve. It's very hard for you to mourn and really sort of go through that sort of process. And even now, months after, I can see that you're still, you're not, the content is not there. That sort of chapter hasn't really closed to your satisfaction, has it?
No, it's because at the time as well, I had to deal with arranging the funeral, getting the death certificate and everything, and it felt like everything had to get blocked off. Even now, it's like a dream. It's not happened. I don't sleep at night because I wake up in the middle of the night and I can see my dad. I can't sleep. Then I think about my uncle who, died. His daughter-in-law and daughter went, and the doctor saying there's only one person allowed, but they kind of, I don't know how they got in, but they got in and they were told to leave. So in the room when my uncle passed away, it's just his daughter and grandson, and they video linked everyone, the video call so everyone can see him dying. And you know what? I haven't even been. We can't go there because of the lockdown anyway,
No, no.
and obviously because of the COVID. And we understand that. We respect that. We respect trying to control it. I work in the community and I see, like you said, all the elderly people that are passing away. When I was in Pakistan and I was looking on Facebook, and you go to the graveyard, there's graves every other day. There's 3, 4 graves. We see it. To be honest with you, I've been going for the first week every day. Then went back to work, and so I've been going once a week or whatever. But I still can't. I haven't cried for my father. I, f- I feel that was taken away from me. I didn't have that opportunity to sit down and cry, and I think that's kind of made me really ill as well mentally, because I haven't let my emotions come out, and all I want to do is sit down and kind of scream and cry that my dad's passed away, but I can't get those feelings out, and I don't know how that's going to happen, because I think sometimes in bereavement they say anger takes over. And one of the things, we were talking to someone as well, that I was on a webinar with the equalities, race equality paper that they're getting ready. One of the things that we don't see in our community is culturally sensitive bereavement counseling for our families, and nobody gets counseling. I'm trying to think about my auntie in Dewsbury, who was whose family were not allowed to go in the house. Obviously, her children, they live next door to each other. Her husband died. Her 2 sons were critical in hospital. One's come home, one still isn't home. There was no one there to put their arms around her. Does that make sense? Her daughter wasn't
Yeah,
even
no,
allowed
most
to come
definitely.
and be there. So they brought the coffin outside the house and let them look from outside. They weren't allowed to go janazah. They weren't allowed to go mosque. And that's another topic really, where why women are being treated differently in the mosque than the men are. When someone, especially if I'm gonna look that if it's your father and mother that died, it doesn't make a difference whether you're a man or a woman to go to the mosque. So those conditions are, I'm not happy with that. Maybe that's another topic we can talk about one of the days.
No, not
But
at all. We can
the
touch on
way,
that. But before we do that, Razia, Javed has said very heartbreaking account of Razia's experience.
hmm
I pray that no other
thank
family
you.
has to go through this, and that's what I want to really
hmm
echo. That I think even though you weren't ready last week, I think this is the talking about it. This is part of that sort of counselling, healing process, and I think
mm
the more time is a great healer. The more you talk about it, the more you come to terms with it. And I think what I will say is, from your father, he has raised beautiful children. You're a great example of that. He has completed
Thank you.
all of his responsibilities, and I'm sure that he's, died with everything that he needed to do, and he's died sort of content. And if that gives you a bit of help and reassurance, and
hmm
be able to overcome that, I hope you find a bit of comfort in that. So I'm going to sort of rewind back now, back to the hospitals, because I know, did you complain at that time? Because I know the whole emotions are
No.
quite raw. Did you talk about the fact that, at that time, no one wanted to go into hospitals because everyone was afraid that whoever goes is not going to come out, and also a lot of patients are actually in pain, and sometimes they can't
Yeah, I'm
communicate
one of
that, and
them.
sometimes the stories where they're
Yeah.
screaming and no one comes to their aid. So I think we have to get that one nominated person, which I think, because I
Absolutely.
know I had Councillor Paulette Hamilton confirmed that UHB hospital allow one person from the family to be the person that can go and visit. So, I mean, did you complain or did you make your feeling known after?
No, no, because I think we it was we were in shock straight away dealing with my dad. We were caring for him 24 hours a day and we're not sleeping. We're up till 12, 1 o'clock every evening for 8 weeks. It did take a big toll on us. My sister, who lives in Wales, came over to care 24 hours a day to be with my dad. We were in and out, like getting to work, trying to get to work and go back. It's also not only that, I think people need to understand that when you're in a crisis situation like this, it actually damages the families within themselves as well. So the
Sure.
arguments and everything. So you have to pick up those pieces as well. And sometimes you say hurtful things. And I think we've had a really hard journey. And I think a
I
lot
can
of people
imagine.
in our shoes have been through similar situations. We One of the things we were saying also that you've got the Nightingale hospitals, if they're very uh, critical COVID patients, they should be in that Nightingale hospital, free up these hospitals so patients can have the confidence to go back to get their health checked. They're not going, they're too scared.
Yeah.
My mom fell actually after my dad was in hospital and hurt her elbow and she was in pain for a month. We still didn't take her because we thought
Yeah.
therefore they'd taken dad, so we're certainly not going to send you in. And finally, we took the courage. We did take her, and the hospital said, "Oh, we can't do nothing for you. You need to be referred from your doctor." What was all that about? The hospitals seem to be empty because people are scared to go in.
Yeah.
So they need
The
to
fear is
im
real.
im they need to invest in the Nightingale and leave the local hospitals for the local people, the local community. I work in the community. I hear people's stories. I hear their concerns. Everyone says, if you're sick, don't go to the hospital. And
Absolutely.
it's like the saying is, you'd rather die at home than go in hospital and not be allowed with your family.
During this COVID, I think there is a real, whether it's the fear, whether it's real or not, of anyone, never mind the elderly, of not being admitted to a hospital because, rightly or wrongly, there was everyone that was going to hospital. There was a rumor going around that they did not, be discharged afterwards. And since then, a huge number of people, whether it was elective surgeries, what I mean by that is whether it was a pre-prepared
Yeah.
appointment or whether it was a emergency admission, no one wanted to go there unless they really, really had to. So, and as a result, we've seen an increase in patients dying from cancer, from heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and I think that's a real worry, really, that we need to make sure that misconception by people is addressed. I've got another, if anyone's listening that they want to pose any questions or comments to Sister Razia, then please do so. Javed has said, hearing Baji Razia's account and experience brought tears to my eyes. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easier for her and her family. So, there's a lot of good
Thank you.
wishes, there's a lot of prayers that are being done for your father and for your family to make sure you've got the patience to overcome this real tragic, period that you're going through. It is a testing time, and normally, Razia, it is your family and those of us that are of a faith background, your religion that gets you through this difficult
Hmm.
time. I remember my mother passing away about 15 months ago, and if it wasn't for the immediate family and because of my deen or my religion, you know,
Hmm.
I would still be in pieces. And at the moment, because of COVID and social distancing, certainly family can't be there. And even when you go to the funeral prayers, the janazah, before he was 6, now it is 30. We have huge families.
Massive.
30 is a very difficult one. Sometimes, the first cousins aren't able to attend because
Hmm.
there's too many people in the family, and I see the point about sometimes that causes friction within the family as to who can be there, who's in charge. Trying to do the best in a very difficult situation.
Yeah, I'll say for our experience that my father passed away before the this stage of lockdown, and um, obviously what happened with us was that we were really supported by our local mosque. So they let
Good.
us, they actually facilitated a section off for the ladies, and we didn't have everyone like you normally would. It was just our, the daughters and few cousins and my mom and my aunties. We had that 2 hours so we can sit with dad and read. So we had that opportunity, and I know a lot of people didn't have that opportunity. And when my friend's mother died, because their father died 10 days after their mom died, and there was a Milad in Sufi Abdullah's mosque, and they gave them a tiny little room in the corner, and then they said only 10 of you allowed. There's four daughters, one daughter-in-law, and at that stage you just lost your father. You just buried him, and you came back, and your mother died, and you're told you can only have 10 people. But the Milad was going on, and the guy, the chairperson, whoever it was, he was so rude. He was shouting at them, and he was telling us to leave and go upstairs to the Milad. But we weren't here for the Milad. We were here for a death, to comfort our friends. And so we went outside and we sat in the car, and the video called us so we can hear the janaza. And the milad was going on, but they didn't take the speakers off so that those people that were there can read the janaza. They said no, you just segregated them. It was awful the way they were treated. And for me, my argument is that, for example, for my dad, we did the care for him. I arranged the funeral for him, and obviously my brothers and my husband and that done the ghusl. And then we were like thrown out. That's now it's a men's part, and we don't get any say in anything. We're not allowed in the mosque. We're not allowed this. But if it wasn't for the Sparkbrook Mosque, that because of my connections with the local community, they stepped out for us, and that we had that opportunity. But my friends who literally were their friends and family were thrown out of the mosque. And the mosques
That's
are
not
so
right. That's not
big.
right.
Why
Absolutely.
can't they have, if they're gonna have 30, they can have 30 in one large room for the men, and they can have 30 for the females. Why are the females getting kicked out and not being able to say their final farewell? So I'm a campaigner for women, and I believe that women should have equal rights, and the way women are treated when it comes to someone's death and the mosque is really unfair. I have to say that
Yeah,
because
I just want to
it's
sort of
just
echo
been.
that really, Razia. I think, when anyone passes away, the family and the emotions are extremely vulnerable. They're very raw. And that's where you need anyone, whether anyone that's dealing with the funeral process, whether it's the coroner, whether it's the registry, whether it's the funeral directors, the mosque, whether it's the family, the wider family, you have to be very sensitive to the needs, and everyone deals in different way, and people want to say their farewell in different way, and I fully sort of support that. There's no reason why before the janaza, women can also come and say their farewell, and then obviously the men can go and take the body and read the janaza as well. So
That's fine.
absolutely,
But
I agree with
yeah,
you on that
sorry,
sense. And
yeah.
there's another commenter
Well,
here, Razia.
yeah,
So sad. I applaud you, Badi Razia, for speaking out and sharing your experience. I have nothing but praise for your utmost determination to share your horrific experience. And I think we need to
thank you.
get that out there, because unfortunately, I think as a community, we tend to bottle a lot of our feelings up. And in this sort of situation, unless you talk about it, whether it's to your family, or if you can't do that, to your friends, then you have professional counselors who are trained in this. And unless you do that, then you will bottle it up, and it's going to eat away inside of you, and no one wants that.
Mm. Because when we were treated, when we were told to leave the room and go upstairs to the Milad, when we came from funeral, and we thought this was so disgraceful, the way that they were treated, and he was shouting at them. It was just like, what the hell? Their mothers just died, and you're shouting, and I just couldn't believe it. This is supposed to be our Islamic place. And I don't know. I agree with what you said. If women come at the beginning, pay their respects and go, and then the men can come, We know the men gotta read the janazah. There's no issue. We understand the culture, but we when we first spoke to our funeral director, he because when Dad first got ill, we were trying to make plans ahead, and he said, "Do you know that no mosque in Birmingham are letting women in?" I said, well, why not? Because I don't agree with that. So it was quite shocking. So we're dealing with all this and all the rules and regulations and the COVID rules, which I respect, but I couldn't understand allowed to come to the mosque.
Yeah, no,
Why?
it is
No
it is
one's
a
answered
difficult
that
one,
question.
and
But I needed to,
uh,
I wanted to raise it because the mosque buildings are so big that they can accommodate. We got accommodated. We were lucky. We were fortunate that we got accommodated. But I'm just feel sorry for people who
no,
can't who
no.
can't
We've
even
got about
go and
five
say
minutes
goodbye.
left now, Razia. We've got about 5 minutes
Yeah,
left. I've got some more comments coming through. So, guys, if you want to say anything or pass your messages on to Razia, then please do so. Got a couple of more comments I'm going to read out to you. Thanks to Badi Razia for taking time out from a busy schedule to talk about your experience. You are a champion of women's rights. We salute you.
thank you.
Please keep up the good work. Every blessing fits you. Your late dad would be so proud of you. You're a credit to your dad who treated his daughters equally as he did with his son. So that
Yeah.
just shows the way you're coming across and the outpouring of support that is with you, and the experience that you've had, obviously, which hasn't been pleasant. So all in all, we believe in that one day we all have to go. What we have to do is try to go in a respectful way and make it manageable for the individual, but also for the family to be supported and for them to be, counseled during the period, and make sure they are able to overcome their mourning and be able to cope with their grief. And it seems as though at this period, those needs and those requirements aren't being met. So, as a final thought, then, Razia, what would you do, now that you've been through it, for to make sure further families and further individuals don't suffer the way your father and you have suffered?
I think it's very important that family members, whether it's one or two, are allowed to go in when the person is taken for the first time, regardless of what illness it is, whether it's COVID or anything else. Second thing is, I think also um, that there need to be a better communication system between the hospital and the family, and they need to be updated about what's going on. And also, I think while we're on the topic as well, that the mosques need to be more accommodating with families, and they need to understand that people have lost someone. They're not going to see that person again. This is the last time for them. And one of the positive things I'd say that came out of all this, because of all the online stuff and everything, that the funeral, the death certificate and all that, they kind of speed that up. That was really fast, and the funeral sorry, the registry office were really supportive, and I was quite shocked to see how fast all that worked. So, and our doctors were amazing. She came out of a holiday, they really, where they helped us. They were amazing, our doctors. For my father's family doctor, I couldn't thank them enough for what they did. But I still think that PPE should be allowed for family members to wear and go into the hospital to be with their loved one. We pay our taxes. We have every right to have that expense to wear the PPE and be with our parents or anyone else at their final stage of their life.
How are you now, Razia, and how's your family? Are they in a better place? Are you beginning to sort of cope a bit more better with what's happened?
I think coping is, I was talking to my sister earlier on before I came on, and I think it's really hard, and I think we're not really grieved. I'm not going to say we're in a better place because I don't think we'll ever be in a better place with our dad. I just hope my father's in a better place because I'm sure he is. It's going to be a very long time before I forget the pain that he had to endure. If he was home, or if we were allowed, he probably would have probably, I mean, we believe in our Deen, and we know that it was his time, but he didn't have to go through the pain before he died. He could have died peacefully without all the pain. And we fought really hard, and we didn't let Dad go on morphine and all these injections they had ready. We really fought hard, and we hopefully Dad died peacefully at home in the end. But that was a fight. I mean, a couple of times we had to argue the doctors not to take him back from home when they come to check on him. And I think if we didn't fight and fight for our rights, Dad probably would have died in hospital all on his own.
If I or ZMC TV network can do anything to support you or to assist in any kind of way, then please, we're here for you. And furthermore, I strongly urge you to now, when at some point, just to share your experience with the hospital. I think that's
Yeah.
important, really. And any other, it's because, like I said, any family that can be prevented from going through the difficulty and the hardship that you have, I
Hmm.
think you'll get immense reward for that, and they'll thank
Okay.
you for it. So I think you've been extremely brave. You've been really courageous to come on here when your emotions are quite raw, and it's still very much up in the air the way things have been dealt with. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration. We've all been
Hmm.
through it, and the fact that you've come here publicly on a public platform to talk about your feelings and your experience, I think just shows a testament to yourself and to your family as well. So I'm just going to sort of finish off. So we just wanted to really pass my feelings on. So for those of you who are
Thank
listening,
you.
that was Sister Razia talking about the a couple of deaths that she's had. One is her immediate father, and second one is her uncle as well, who have passed away in the last few weeks and months. And he has been a real difficult period for them, both in terms of in hospital, where we know a lot of our elderly patients and our parents don't want to go because of the fear that once they go there, they won't be allowed or they won't come back because of the high mortality rates. And secondly, also because of the language barrier, it is absolutely important one nominated person from the family is there coordinating between the hospital, the patient, and the family. That's absolutely crucial because we know there are language barriers. Not everyone is able to use a phone as well. There's also times when someone has to talk about the pain, where it is, and they may need some medication to ease that pain. There's also some concerns around the food some elderly patients have, whether it is halal or not as well. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's going on. It's important that a family member is appointed, and afterwards, if God forbid, the person does pass away, then this is where the people that are dealing with the body and the funeral arrangements are very sensitive to the family's needs as well, and the whole thing is very delicate, and they treat it as such as well, because as you can see from Razi's experience now, it's still very raw. She hasn't grieved fully, and she hasn't been able to mourn, and she's still feeling that regret, and then there's a lot of anger there to prevent having a similar experience. And if you are, there are a lot of support services out there, professional services, do take up counselling rather than bottling it all in. I hope you found that useful as well. And if you want to reach out with me in any kind of situation because you are dealing with it, not that I am a care, but I can certainly, sorry, a professional, but I can give you an ear to, listen to, and I can certainly signpost you on to some professional, pastoral and counselling services. Please take care. God bless. And from next week, 2nd of December, we are in tier 3 as well. So we have to make sure we maintain our hands, face, and space, maintain our social distancing, and get those numbers down before if we are to come into tier 2. Okay. On that note, God bless and look after yourselves and each other.